Alright, I'm back. This video is called Exposing Cana4567. Some of you might have seen her face lurking around YouTube. Alright, now this video is not, my intent is not to shame her, but to correct her publicly. We was talking about the virgin birth, Christ. She told me that, well, the question was to her, which genealogy is of Jesus, Matthew or Luke? She chose Matthew. She said Yeshua, who she calls Christ, is from the line of Judah, David, Solomon, right? So she said Matthew's is the genealogy of Christ. Now, all I gotta do is show her that Christ did not come from this genealogy, and she's done. Which I did. Joseph, in his own genealogy, is not on record for begetting Abraham. Jesus Christ. Begot Isaac, and Isaac begot Jacob, and Jacob begot Judas and his brethren. Verse 16. And Jacob begot Joseph, the husband of Mary, of whom was born Jesus, who was called Christ. Joseph did not beget anyone. Read the genealogy again. But he was the husband of Mary, and Mary was of whom Jesus was born. Jesus was born of Mary, but not begotten by Joseph. Okay, let's look at verse 3. And Judas begot Phares of Tamar. Phares was begotten by Judas and of Tamar. Verse 5. And Salmon begot Booz of Rahab. So Booz was begotten by Salmon and of Rahab. Let's go back to verse 16. And Jacob begot Joseph, the husband of Mary, of whom was born Jesus, who was called Christ. So Zerah is of Tamar, Booz is of Rahab, and Jesus is of Mary. So we know that these were their mothers by the word of, and we also know their fathers by the word begot. Okay, so I simply and clearly proved that Mary was a virgin, and that Jesus' mother was Mary, and that nobody begot Jesus. Instead, in Joseph's own genealogy, it said that Christ was born of Mary. Alright? So now, Cana then went on to share with me Hebrews chapter 2, verse 16. First, she said, Christ did not come like the angels. He came so that we, the people, the believers, would not have an excuse for not being perfect, which is the furthest from the truth. Christ did not come to show us, to basically take away excuses. Christ came to take away sin. All right. He came so that he can die. He came as flesh and blood so he can die and conquer death, which would be conquering sin. That's why he came. But anyway, moving on. She said that, okay, so she quoted Hebrews chapter 2, verse 16. For verily he took not on him the nature of angels, but he took on him the seed of Abraham. And note how she put seed in all caps, as though this was saying something. Alright? This she says, the man gives the seed, not the woman. Well, first of all, Cana4567, this seed that you emphasize on is not the emphasis of this verse at all. This verse, if you look at the Strong's numbers, it more accurately translates as, for Christ did not come to help the nature or help the angels. Christ did not come to help the angels. But Christ came to help the descendants of Abraham, seed of Abraham, children of Abraham, whatever. As we look at the Greek lexicon, the words are of angels he helps, but of the seed of Abraham he helps. So it's talking about Christ did not come with the body of an angel
because the angels were not in need of help. Christ came as a human because Abraham's descendants were humans, and as humans, they were in need of help. That's what it's talking about. And this is why we have other translations read thus so. The New International Version reads, "For surely it is not angels he helps, but Abraham's descendants." The New Living Translation reads, "We also know that the Son did not come to help angels, he came to help the descendants of Abraham." English Standard Version reads, "For surely it is not angels that he helps, but he helps the offspring of Abraham."
But seed was not the focal point, or neither was it supposed to be emphasized. Okay, so this verse was just simply saying Christ did not come to help the angels because they were not the ones who were subjected to sin, who was fearful of death. They can't die, and they don't sin. Christ came to help the children of Abraham, the seed of Abraham, the descendants of Abraham, because they were the ones who were fearful of death, and sin was conquering them. Simple as that. All right. Then Cana4567 figured that she would break down Matthew chapter 1, verse 18 more clearer to me. And she said this. She said, they had sex, Mary and Joseph. They had sex before they were actually married. Joseph was afraid they would stone her. There would be no blood on the sheets. He wanted to put her away because of that. So this is her reasonings as to why Joseph was minded to put Mary away privily. Because they had sex before they were actually married. So Joseph was afraid they would stone her. So I don't know how that makes sense, because sex consecrates marriage. But she said they had sex before they were actually married. I guess she's meaning before this ceremony. And they would stone her because there would be no blood on the sheets. He wanted to put her away because of that. Now, I have no idea what she meant by that. So I'll let her explain further as to what she meant by that. And this is what she said. Well, this is what she wrote. She wrote that he knew her not. He did not have sex with her again until after the baby was born, because the angel came and spoke to him and told him not to put her away. So she said that he did not have sex with her again until the baby was born, as though they had sex before the baby. I don't know what the hell she's saying. But she said they were engaged to be married, but they did not do it publicly yet. She was already pregnant. So she said, the conclusion of the whole matter. She said, I pray, brother, that you are at least humble enough to admit that the virgin birth is a lie and a false doctrine. She said, just to recap, you can't break down the New Testament unless you fully understand the Old Testament. Alright? Now, mind you, she's a member of the GOCC. So, this is obviously what they're teaching in their academy. She said, because our forefathers did things based on the law, if they were considered righteous and just. So she goes to Matthew chapter 1, verse 19. Then Joseph, her husband, being a just man and not willing to make her a public example, was minded to put her away privily. Now look at her reasonings for this, which is unbiblical. She said that the law was in marriage. She said the law was in marriage. You must present the bride's father and mother a token of virginity. Now she said this is the law. Okay, the law was in marriage. You must present the bride's father and mother a token of virginity. Right? Joseph was to give the token of virginity or cloth with blood after he laid with Mary. She said this is the law at the ceremony of them coming together. She said this is the law. Okay. She had went on to say the father and mother would then hold on to the token as proof that the marriage was valid. Okay. That sounds good, right? That sounds excellent. The problem is it's unbiblical. So I asked this woman, this Negro woman, what law was that? Okay. And she directed me to Deuteronomy chapter 22, verse 13, to her own demise. So keep in mind that she said the law was in marriage. You must present the bride's father and mother a token of virginity. Joseph was to give the token of virginity or cloth with blood after he laid with Mary. This is the law, she says in caps, at the ceremony of them coming together. The father and mother would then hold on to the token as proof that the marriage was valid. Now, when you're reading something and you're trying to understand something more deeply, there's two ways to understand it. The right way and the wrong way, obviously. And this is called exegesis and eisegesis. Okay, exegesis is pulling the correct understanding out of what's there. And eisegesis is putting something in the understanding that's not there to make sense of it. Now we're going to see that she's definitely guilty of eisegesis. She said the only logical reason Joseph wanted to put Mary away was because he had already had sex with Mary and could not give the token, cloth with blood, to Mary's father and mother. Okay, so that's why Joseph wanted to put Mary away privily. Cana4567 was telling me. And I was telling her, if that's her understanding, then she's clearly and obviously vexed with a demon. So she said, so at the coming together, which is public, he knew they would stone Mary if there was no blood on the cloth. This is clearly eisegesis. What is she talking about? All right. She go on to ask if Mary was pregnant by the Holy Spirit and not a man, her hymen would still be intact and there would be no blood on the cloth cause they never had sex. But that was not the case. So now let's go back to Deuteronomy chapter 22 verse 13 and let's see what she's talking about. And let's see if this is what she says it is. It starts off by saying, if any man take a wife and go in unto her and hate her. Okay. Note that the husband hating his wife is the subject of this whole entire story we're about to read. Okay. Note that. So already we have a problem with Cana4567 or GOCC's explanation, because Joseph did not hate Mary or speak ill of her. Right. Verse 14. And give occasions of speech against her, and bring up an evil name upon her, and say, I took this woman, and when I came to her sex, I found her not a maid. Note, that came to her means sexual intercourse. Verse 15. Then shall the father of the damsel and her mother take and bring forth the tokens of the damsel's virginity unto the elders of the city in the gate. So, after this accusation, the father and the mother have obligations if they want to clear their daughter's name. Not law. This is just their evidence. Because their daughter's being accused of being a whore, an adulterer. Verse 16. And the damsel's father shall say unto the elders, I gave my daughter unto this man to wife, and he hateth her. And lo, he hath given occasions of speech against her, saying, I found not thy daughter a maid, and yet these are the tokens of my daughter's virginity, and they shall spread the cloth before the elders of the city. Okay, by having spread before them the sheet stained with the blood of her virginity upon her husband's first congress with her. In other words. Now keep in mind, the only reason for anyone to look at the tokens or cloth was to verify a virginity, and only an accusation by the husband would call for this. Nothing else. Therefore, the only way Mary will be put to shame will be by Joseph accusing Mary as being an adulterer, because she is pregnant and they did not come together, had sex yet. Wow. Verse 20. But if this thing be true, and the tokens of virginity be not found for the damsel, then they shall bring out the damsel to the door of her father's house, and the men of her city shall stone her with the stones that she die, because she hath wrought folly in Israel, to play the whore in her father's house, so shall put the evil away from among you. Stop. Stop. Verse 20 says, but if this thing be true, what thing be true? What thing be true, Cana4567? What thing be true, GOCC? If this thing be true that the man had sex with her and she was not a virgin. If that be true. If that be true. Okay? So now if a man accuses his wife of not being a virgin when he has sex with her, he's calling her an adulterer. So now the only argument she has is I'm not an adulterer. The proof is my mom and my dad had the tokens of my virginity. And the token of virginity is the bloody cloth that was found or given to the parents right after the man and the woman had sex. So if that man that is accusing the damsel of not being a virgin, then after they had sex, the cloth would not have blood on it. So the parents who would have seen the cloth would not have kept it, because it had been clear that that there was no virginity being lost. Or if they did keep it, it had been just evidence that their daughter was not a virgin. Okay? But the parents would keep a bloody cloth as proof, as evidence, or as a token of their daughter's virginity being broken. But verse 20 says, but if this thing be true, if she's not indeed a virgin, then and there is no tokens of virginity be found for the damsel, they shall bring her out and stone her. So the damsel isn't getting stoned for not having tokens to prove the authenticity of her marriage. The damsel is getting stoned for being an adulteress, because she has played the whore by having sex by someone else. Cana4567. So now if we look back at Matthew chapter 1 and verse 19, then Joseph, her husband, being a just man and not willing to make her a public example, was minded to put her away privily. So as we have clearly read, only an adulteress is made a public example, and not a hypothetical woman who had not given her parents virgin tokens. Okay? So if only an adulteress is worthy, or adulteress is worthy of public shame, Then we know for a fact that Joseph believed that Mary was pregnant by someone else, and this is why he thought not to have her stoned publicly as an adulterer. Okay? And also, this is why he second guessed the angel when the angel said, or he kept thinking on it when the angel said, take Mary. Don't be afraid to take Mary as your wife. Okay? Why would he be afraid to take Mary as his wife? Because that means that he will be having sex with a woman whom already has sex, therefore making himself an adulterer. That's what he was afraid of. Okay? That's what he's afraid of. So now that we proved that you was a lie and your exegesis was wrong and was just an eisegesis, now let's go into Hebrews chapter 2, verse 16, and let's understand that correctly. But first, let's start at verse 1. Let's read it in context. Hebrews chapter 2, verse 1. Therefore, we ought to give the more earnest heed to the things which we have heard, lest at any time we should let them slip. Verse 2. If the word spoken by angels was steadfast, and every transgression and disobedient received a just recompense of rewards. In other words, it translates like this. After all, the message that the angels brought was reliable, and every violation and act of disobedience was properly punished. So now, you got to be careful. If the angels telling us that Mary and Joseph did not have sex, but the Holy Spirit overshadowed, with the power of the highest, overshadowed Mary, then that's what it's saying. All right? Because the angels' messages are reliable, and every violation and act of disobedience is properly punished. You will be punished. Verse 3. How shall we escape if we neglect so great salvation, which at the first began to be spoken by the Lord, and was confirmed unto us by them that heard him? Translation. So how will we escape punishment if we reject the important message? The message that God saved us. First, the Lord told this saving message. Then those who heard him confirmed that message. Verse 4. God also bearing them witness, both with signs and wonders, and with divers miracles, and gifts of the Holy Ghost. You heard that? God also bearing the witness, both with signs and wonders, and with divers miracles, and gifts of the Holy Ghost, according to his own will. This is all in accordance with the virgin birth. Signs, wonders, miracles, and gifts of the Holy. Verse 5. For unto the angels hath he not put in subjection the world to come wherefore we speak. Translation. He didn't put the world that will come, about which we are talking, under the angels' control. Verse 6. But one in a certain place testifies, saying, What is man, that thou art mindful of him? Or the Son of Man, that thou visited him? Verse 7. Thou madest him a little lower than the angels. Thou crownest him with glory and honor, and didst set him over the works of thy hands. Translation. You made him a little lower than the angels. You crown him with the glory, or you crown him with glory and honor. Verse 8. Thou hast put all things in subjection under his feet, for in that he put all in subjection under him. He left nothing that is not put under him, but now we see not yet all things put under him. Verse 9. But we see Jesus, who was made a little lower than the angels, for the suffering of death, crowned with glory and honor, that he by the grace of God shall taste death for every man. Translation. Jesus was made a little lower than the angels, but we see him crowned with glory and honor because he suffered death. Through God's kindness, he died on behalf of everyone. Verse 10. For it became him, for whom are all things, and by whom are all things, and bringing many sons unto glory, to make the captain of their salvation perfect through sufferings. Verse 11. For both he has sanctified, and they who are sanctified are all of one, for which he is not ashamed to call them brethren. Verse 12. Saying, I will declare thy name unto my brethren, in the midst of the church will I sing praise unto thee. Verse 13. And again, I will put trust in him. And again, behold, I and the children which God hath given me. Verse 14. For as much then as the children are partakers of flesh and blood, he also himself likewise took part of the same, that through death he might destroy him that had the power of death, that is, the devil. The New Living Translation translated like this: children are human beings made of flesh and blood. The Son also became flesh and blood, for only as a human being could he die. So he had to come as flesh and blood so he can die. I'm reading on. And only by dying he break the power of the devil, who had the power of death. So you are a liar, Cana4567, by saying Christ died to eliminate excuses. No. Or, I'm sorry, she said that Christ came down as a man to eliminate excuses. No. What book are you reading? God came down as flesh and blood so he can die, so he can break the power of the devil, who had the power over death. The International Standard Version reads like this: therefore, since the children have flesh and blood, he himself also shared the same things, so that by his death he might destroy the one who has the power of death, that is, the devil. The Aramaic Bible in plain English reads like this: for because the children share together in flesh and blood, he also shared in these things in the same form, so that by his death he would destroy the one who had held authority of death, who is Satan. Last translation, Weymouth New Testament. Since then the children referred to are all alike, sharers in perishable human nature. He himself also in the same way took on him a share of it, in order that through death he might render powerless him who had authority over death, that is, the devil. That is why Christ came as flesh and blood, and no other reason. Verse 15. And delivered them, who through fear of death were all their lifetime subjected to bondage. Okay? So the children of Israel was fearful from the bondage of death all their life. Not the angels. So this is why Christ didn't come to help angels. They're not in bondage of death, and neither do they fear their life. Okay? Jesus came as flesh and blood so that he can conquer death once and for all, so the children of Israel will have nothing to fear. Okay, 1 Corinthians 15 backs this up. Verse 55. O death, where is thy sting? O grave, where is thy victory? Okay, we will call that in modern term language, bragging. Verse 56. The sting of death is sin, and the strength of sin is the law. Okay, so now let's look at verse 16. Verse 16. For verily he took not on him the nature of angels, but he took on him the seed of Abraham. Is that your problem, Cana4567, and maybe perhaps GOCC? Well, this is how it translates when you go into the Strong's numbers and break it down correctly. So Jesus helps Abraham's descendants rather than helping angels. That's what verse 16 just clearly says. Okay? And when we read in context, it led up to this. It's saying that Abraham's descendants were fearful and afraid of death, not the angels. They can't die. Okay? So he came to help the descendants of Abraham as opposed to the angels. The angels didn't need any help. Verse 17. Wherefore in all things it behooved him to be made like unto his brethren, that he might be a merciful and faithful high priest in things pertaining to God, to make reconciliation for the sins of the people. So it says, made like unto his brethren. See, that means mother and father. No. Flesh and blood, like it said earlier, fool. Verse 18. For in that he himself has suffered, being tempted, he is able to succor them that are tempted. Okay? That's the true breakdown. So, once again, this is called exposing Cana4567, but this is not really trying to make it look bad or anything.